Hello there, I'm James with Penner Trailer Sales. Today I'm going to put together sort of a buying guide for dump trailers. If you're new to dump trailers or looking to buy a dump trailer, there's lots of details and lots of options that you're going to be flooded with to absorb at one time. So we're going to want to kind of break that down one trailer at a time. We mostly sell Max D trailers here, so this video will feature a lot of Max Ds. We also have a Lamar to start with, but this will be good for any brand of trailer, any brand of dump trailer that you're looking at. First of all, I'll start with kind of a universal list, regardless of size, but universal things to look for of what will kind of differentiate a well-built trailer from more an economy, lower grade trailer. One of the first things that I look for, just straight out of the gate and at a distance, is the top rail. How well built is the top rail? You want to see that come up from the inside and out and wrap back and be a closed or a boxed top rail. That gives you an indication that this trailer is going to be well built. Another thing to be looking for is the wiring. You want a sealed wiring harness. In today's day, industry standard is a sealed wiring harness. If they use heat shrink butt connectors, that's acceptable. But today, molded harnesses are pretty much the standard. If you're seeing wire nuts or splice connectors, that's not a good sign. That's going to be an economy lower end trailer. Another one is finish. Powder coat versus paint are the two primary options. Powder coat, again, is more or less today industry standard. Painting can be done well, but powder coat's an industrial finish that has good abrasion resistance and really holds up very well for the type of usage that a dump trailer will see. Another option is a tarp, a pullback tarp. Pretty much any jurisdiction you live in, DOT regulations are going to require you to have loose material or trash, mulch, leaves, and so on tarped while going down the road. Many people will get away without tarping it, just like many people can go without a seatbelt and not have any trouble with that. But at some point in the lifetime of having a dump trailer, you're going to need a tarp. Some dump stations even won't allow you to dump trash there without a tarp. All of our trailers, the tarp comes standard. And when you're looking at that pullback tarp, you want to see it mounted below the top rail. You don't want to see it mounted up here above the bed of the trailer, because if you ever have a tractor or maybe you want to lay lumber, you don't want it mounted up here because it's susceptible to damage. You want to see that mounted down under the level of the top rail of the bed. Another detail you'll be looking at is frame construction. C-channel, box tube, and I-beam are common. On the smaller ones, you'll see tubes and C-channels. Generally, that's on a lighter duty trailer. One consideration with tubes is they can hold moisture inside and have rust issues, especially if you're in a northern climate. But generally you see that type of construction on a lighter duty trailer. Your medium and heavier duty trailers are going to have an I-beam construction. I-beams are quite strong, able to get great structural characteristics out of it, and by nature you're able to have whatever coating all around that. There's much less susceptibility to rust over time. So I-beam, very common and great choice of frame construction for a dump trailer. Another somewhat small detail to look for, the most common way for holding a door back while dumping is the use of chains. Great place to mount them is on the inside of the door rather than on the outside, because it'll over time wear through your finish. On the inside, the finish is going to get abused anyway. So mount it on the inside and then just secured with a hook. Chain's very durable and replaceable. Just again, kind of a smaller detail that over time is really nice. Next, we'll take a minute to talk about suspensions. There are three main types of suspensions you'll find on dump trailers. One is an eye-to-eye, next would be a slipper spring, and finally torsion axle. Eye-to-eye and slippers are very similar. You'll find eye-to-eye on lighter axles, usually just 3,500 pound axles. The spring says it's called eye-to-eye because the spring has an eye in both ends for a bolt, and then there's shackles on both ends. And the limiting factor there is those shackles are a small shackle. The material isn't that heavy. It works well on, like I say, a 3,500 pound axle, but as you move up from there, you're going to find slipper springs. You can also get 3,500 pound axles in slipper springs, which is what this is. Now, both eye-to-eye axles and slipper springs utilize an equalizer in between the axles. That allows, as you go through any dips or bumps, for the axles to float and compensate for that height difference so that the loading can be equal throughout going through a bump or through a hole or over a bump. So that equalizer right now is pivoted down because the frame is up a bit because it's up on the jack. But that equalizer right there basically just serves to equalize through uneven terrain. By contrast, Torsion axles do not utilize an equalizer. They're both in a tandem torsion axle arrangement. The torsion axle tube is solid mounted to the frame, and there's just a torsion arm that rotates. So they aren't able to compensate or equalize through uneven terrain. If the frame of the trailer is not perfectly level, it'll very quickly load all of the weight on one axle and carry the front axle, even lift the axle off the ground if you're going through an approach or a driveway entrance, or maybe over a curb, maybe through a bump. That's one weakness of torsion axles, is they're not able to equalize. So, and actually, torsion axles are more susceptible to bending. In our experience, we've seen many different trailers and many different applications, and torsion axles, just because of their design, aren't quite as robust as a solid straight axle would be on a slipper spring or an eye-to-eye. So torsion axles, my personal perception would be somewhat detrimental. I would prefer, my personal perception would be slipper springs are an ideal setup for any weight of axle, whether it's 3,500, 5,200, 6,000, 7, 8, 9, up to 10. Slipper axle is really ideal. Now we'll transition to hoist systems. There's three primary hoist designs that you'll find. What I refer to as a straight push, then there's scissor hoist, and then of course telescopic. One of the main things to look for with hoist systems is basic leverage. The different systems will have different leverage points depending on how they're mounted. This straight push hoist here, for example, it's pushing on the bed all the way back here, which is about midpoint. Obviously, that's a natural leverage disadvantage. Now, this is found on a smaller trailer, so there's not as much weight to overcome, so that application can work. Next, for a scissor hoist can be mounted in two orientations. So obviously, they scissor, so they can be forward facing or rear facing. This particular one is forward facing, which allows it to be mounted to be pushing on the trailer much further forward on the bed. This one, for example, is pushing about right here, which is about 3/4 point on this bed, which is a much better leverage advantage as opposed to the one we just looked at. We'll hop over here to a rear facing scissor hoist. As you see here, this scissor hoist is mounted to facing the rear, and mostly the reason why is to be able to get enough of dump angle. The variable as to whether it's forward facing or rear facing has a lot to do with being able to accomplish the dump angle. This is a longer bed trailer, so if you flipped it around, when it would open up, because it's forward facing, wouldn't be able to get sufficient dump angle, whereas rear facing, when you open it up, it's able to get that dump angle that's needed, but you sacrifice leverage by flipping it around. And finally, here's a telescopic. These have the best leverage naturally because it's only lifting on the front, never has to lift more than half of the weight between the hoist versus the hinge. So the best leverage is found with the telescopic. So with these three different hoist types, there's again three main considerations. One is the strain on the trailer when cycling the hoist. With the straight push cylinders, the one we saw earlier was a single push. If you may have a dual push on a larger trailer. Straight push cylinders put the most strain on a trailer frame. Reason for that being, when the bed is down, the cylinder is almost laying flat. That initial push, it's nearly pushing straight against the hinges and loading all of that force in one point against the frame. So single push cylinders create the most extreme stresses when lifting a trailer. By comparison, scissor hoist trailers are an engineered scissor, so that extreme strain is contained inside of the scissor hoist mechanism, and it just translates to a straight push up on the dump trailer bed and the frame. By contrast, the telescopic cylinder generates the least amount of strain, or maybe similar to the scissor hoist, in that it's only pushing on the front and on the end of the bed. The next consideration with hoists is the stability that one affords versus the other. The most stable is the scissor hoist, and the reason for that is because that scissor hoist mechanism, when you lift the dump bed, the only thing that's providing stability to a trailer, to the bed as opposed to the trailer, is the hinges in the back. With a scissor hoist, the scissor hoist also contributes to rigidity. I have two side by side I can demonstrate to you here. With this with this telescopic trailer here, when I push on it, you can see it's not that hard to get a fairly significant amount of movement out of it. By contrast, this scissor hoist trailer raised to the same position, I can get some movement, but it's basically just bed roll. I can't get the same amount of flex. This would become an issue if you're spreading gravel and maybe have a load lifted while driving. You could feel that, it probably would be rare that would really become a significant issue, but it is a consideration. The other consideration is that when this bed is down, again, the bed sitting on the frame, any side movement is supported and limited by the scissor hoist, whereas with this telescopic, when the bed is down, it'll have a little bit more movement. Again, not significant, but it's something to consider. The final then consideration with hoist systems is power up versus power down. So there's power up and power down, and then power up and gravity down. With a telescopic, it's always going to be power up and gravity down. And that's just basically the pump is running and powering it up, and then when it's coming down, it's just opening a valve, and gravity is pushing the fluid back out of the cylinder. You can get scissor hoist in both configurations, power up and power down. Usually they are power up and power down. They can be power up and gravity down. With power down systems, and also while we're talking about power up and power down, straight pushes can also be configured either gravity down or power down. But with power down, when you're lowering the load, and if you were to have gravel and you dumped part of your load and now you want to put it back down, there's still weight, the power down will give a much more controlled descent to lowering the bed. With gravity down, it can be more of a drop and a thump if you have weight in the bed. Furthermore, when you bring the bed and close it, bring it all the way down to the resting position, with a power down, you can put some down force to hold that bed down. With a gravity down, that can't be accomplished. The bed, if you were to chain it and lift it, you can always just lift it straight up with a gravity down. There's nothing holding that bed down at any point other than gravity. A minor consideration with that then, depending on where the hinge is located at the back of the bed, if you're loading a heavy piece of equipment, if that equipment gains leverage on the bed, you've probably seen the YouTube videos of a bed then tipping up. There's nothing holding that bed down. I don't know that, I personally have not heard of that happening, but it would be something I would pay attention to where that hinge is located in relation to the back of the bed for loading a piece of equipment if it's a gravity down. So naturally, with a power down, that down force, driving down the road, it's going to ride tighter and quieter just going down the highway. Maybe railroad tracks might cause a gravity down to bump and have a little bit more movement. Again, not a significant consideration, but it is something to think about, the differences between the different hoist systems. In the last year or two, KTI has come, and maybe other brands as well, but we're familiar with KTI, has come up with a hybrid. It's power up, it's power down, but it also has a gravity down feature, a third button. So this system is kind of all of the above, power up, power down, and gravity down. The benefit there is with a power down, if the battery runs low and you push the down, there'll be enough battery current to open the valve, but not enough battery current to run the pump. And the pump needs to run to be able to cycle the fluid from basically the front of the cylinder to the back of the cylinder. And when the battery dies and only opens the valve but doesn't run the pump, it tries to hold all that fluid in the reservoir, which is not large enough. So you come down and it winds up overflowing the tank and you have a mess and you're not sure what the problem is. In this case, with the gravity down, if your battery's low, you can use that, lower it, and it will naturally cycle the fluid inside of the valve body. Also saves the battery with only having to use the battery for power up and not so much for gravity down. So this is a great, with Max D on all of our dump trailers, this now comes standard on all of their dump trailers. Another one of the many things to consider with hoist styles is with a power up and power down in the toolbox, you're able to have much more space. Power up and power down requires generally a single battery and the pump that's able to be compactly situated in the back of the toolbox, and you're left with plenty of space in the front. By contrast, with the telescopic, Telescopic cylinders move a significantly higher volume of oil. With the scissor, we're just stroking a 5-inch cylinder, maybe at the largest, it's maybe 30 inches long at the max. It could be just a 5-inch by 24, it kind of depends on the configuration. But the volume of oil is not significant. With the telescopic, we have a large cylinder, 144 inches of travel generally. So we have a much larger tank with a pump, and because we're moving such a higher volume of oil, we generally have 2 batteries. That's kind of an industry standard. You want to see 2 batteries with a telescopic. So until you pack all of that in the toolbox, it takes up much more toolbox real estate, and you're only left with a little bit of room over here for chains and straps and so on. So the takeaway from that is, with the power up and power down, you generally will have more toolbox space as opposed to a telescopic. So now that we've looked at a lot of the different design features that are kind of applicable to all different sizes of trailers, we'll kind of take each category of trailers and work up the line from the smallest to the largest. These here are what I would classify as a light duty dump trailer. They're good for yard work, leaves, brush, maybe a lawnmower for equipment, or a small compact tractor. For dirt and gravel hauling, they can haul dirt and gravel, but it's going to be small quantities. You're generally going to look at 7,000 pounds of capacity with hauling. In this case, this trailer is 2 3500s. This trailer here is a single 7K axle, single 7,000 pound axle. For the hitch, you should be seeing a 2 5/16 ball hitch, even though these are smaller trailers. You should see brakes on both axles, brakes on one axle, because you're probably going to be towing this with a smaller tow vehicle. You want plenty of braking power, so look for brakes on both axles. For hoist styles on these, you'll either find straight push or scissor. You pretty much won't find a telescopic because that's just overkill. It's not a good fit for this size of trailer. So scissor hoist and straight push are acceptable, especially because these aren't moving a lot of weight. Common sizes for these trailers are going to be 5 wide, usually at a minimum 5 or 6 feet wide, and 8 to 10, maybe 12 feet long, especially for this weight capacity. Moving up in size to what I would refer to as a medium duty capacity dump trailer would be a 10,000 pound rating, 10 or 12,000 pound rating. It's going to have a 5,200 or 6,000 pound axle. Common sizes for that weight rating are going to be 5 or 6 feet wide, maybe generally 6 feet wide by 10 or 12, maybe 14 feet long. This still isn't large enough to haul a skid steer, but would be able to haul a larger tractor, full-size mowers and so on. And again, would be able to haul gravel and dirt, but lower quantities, not large quantities there. You may commonly spec a medium duty trailer with 4-foot walls, 3 or 4 foot walls, because they do work well for trash or refuse or brush, bulky items that don't have as much weight. You're going to start to want to see more scissor hoists in those applications because they will see more weight. Telescopics are still not applicable for that size range of trailer, but most commonly you're going to see a scissor hoist. In this particular configuration, we're seeing a scissor hoist on this one. And finally, here's some full-size heavy-duty version dump trailers. Here the width is going to be a full 7 feet wide, 83 or 84 inches. That gives you enough width to be able to load most any skid steer and of course a larger tractor. But you can haul equipment with these trailers, has the weight capacity for that. You're going to see at a minimum 7,000 pound axles on this size of trailer. You'll see them spec 7s very commonly with 8,000 pound axles and even up to 10,000 pound axles. But to haul equipment such as a skid steer, you want at least a 7,000 pound axle trailer. You'll see these trailers spec'd with a shorter side more commonly, 24 inches. And the reason for that is if you're hauling equipment or heavy materials such as dirt and gravel, you don't need a large volume trailer. The 2-foot side is sufficient for that. You can get your full weight capacity without having to mount it up that high. But it is frequent, not uncommon to spec these with 3 and sometimes 4-foot sides as well, depending on the application. All of these trailers will have slide-out ramps, the light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty for their respective equipment loading operations. On the heavier duty trailers, maybe the medium duty too, you want to see a stabilizer jack as well. When you're loading a heavy piece of equipment, a heavy skid steer, that helps carry the weight as you're driving it over the tail of the trailer and prevents it from lifting up the tow vehicle, which is naturally a safety hazard and could cause a runaway situation. So stabilizer jacks on a heavy duty trailer are really something you want to see. I'd like to take a few minutes quickly to point out some of the features of MaxD's DHX Super Dump. This is built with a heavier I-beam, heavier C-channel in the bed frame, triple axle suspension, and the hoist is massive. This is a 20,000 pound scissor hoist, much heavier construction with a 6-inch cylinder. You'll see that this scissor hoist is positioned quite far forward as well. So this is capable of lifting quite a bit of weight in this bed. The purpose of this trailer model is to have as robust and capable of dump trailer as possible and as small as footprint as possible. This is the D9X dump trailer. This trailer model stands different from the rest in as it is a deck over dump. So you'll see the height of the dump bed is higher. It's above the wheels. That allows it to be the full width as well. We're not trying to fit it between the fenders. So the interior width is a full 102. That also allows us to have a fold down side, which functions like so, and allows you to use this also somewhat as a flatbed trailer in setting pallets of materials or what have you on here from a side load application. The DDX is the largest dump trailer configuration available. It's a deck over dump as well. It has the 20,000 pound scissor hoist with a 6-inch cylinder and is configured with tandem dual axles. 10, 12, or 15K axles will be available in the DDX. Commonly spec'd with 4-foot sides, this trailer is oftentimes used in tree operations, brush clearing, and so on. So I hope that's been helpful to you in your decision-making process in buying a dump trailer. Here at Penner Trailer Sales, our goal is not to sell you a trailer, but to help you make an informed purchasing decision. Please don't hesitate to give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you, or stop by and give us a visit.